My name is Malaika Silcott, and I'm one of the career advisors in the Tufts Career Center Medford campus. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's Professional in Residence with our guest speaker, Emily Steliotes. Just to give you a quick overview of what the program is going to be like today, I'm going to introduce our speaker, which we are so lucky to have. Then we are going to take some questions and answers from the chat. Robin Khan, Robin, do you want to wave for everybody? She is going to be monitoring the questions in the chat. So when you registered for this event, if you registered today, we asked you to submit a question. So we might not be able to look at those right away, but feel free, if we don't, when we get to that portion of today's event, feel free to either direct message Robin or put it in the chat. So again, my pleasure welcoming you to today's Professional in Residence. Every semester, we generally have a Professional in Residence speaker. We invite alum to come and speak to students to share their career experiences and advice with students of all class years and of all majors. And our hope is that you will benefit from hearing about the journey that Tufts alumni continue to pursue after they leave Tufts. And it will help. Our hope is to help provide you some insider information about jobs, employers, career paths, and more. Today's speaker is Emily Steliotes. Emily has a strong professional background in food systems, research, innovation, and outreach. Emily spent most of her undergraduate career at Tufts researching sugar chemistry, leading the Tufts Hunger Project, and studying Spanish, including doing a semester abroad in Chile. After graduating with a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry in 2015, Emily received a master's degree in Biochemical and Molecular Nutrition from the Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy at the Tufts Boston campus, making her a double jumbo. During the time, she continued her volunteer work at the Preventative Food Pantry at Boston Medical Center, providing healthy food prescriptions to patients with chronic nutrition-related conditions. And this was a unique concept at that time. Since then, she's moved to the West Coast and took a position at the University of California at Davis, where she has since leveraged her background in chemistry and biochemistry to solve research problems in international agriculture and nutrition. So it's my pleasure to welcome Emily Steliotes. She will fill you in on other things that she's done in her career path, and we welcome you. So I'll give the floor to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I appreciate it. So yeah, today I am going to talk about my forging a unique career path in food systems, and definitely want to talk a lot about food systems. I really think this concept of food systems as one thing is a really emerging area. There's the science side, there's the policy side, there's the business aspects, but I really think that there's more and more interest in specific degree programs and specific jobs where food systems as a whole is a topic of interest. So I really want to, my goal is really to expose you to lots of areas within food systems work to see, what angles maybe you would be interested in, and also really show you that my career path was really winding, and that's okay, and that's normal, and there's all these things that it was such a valuable experience that I was exposed to different things at different times, and that allowed me to come to where I am today. So what is a food system? There's a lot of definitions out there. The United Nations has a food systems summit, and according to that definition, the food system includes the related resources, inputs, production, transport, processing, and manufacturing industries, retailing and consumption of food, as well as, and very importantly, the impacts on environment, health, and society. So this is just a diagram that shows basically the impacts that kind of resonate out from the food system. So things like environmental welfare, animal welfare, social welfare, food security, the environmental and socioeconomic drivers of food systems, all are an important part of this concept of a food system. So one main point I want to make is that food systems work is highly interdisciplinary and cross-sector. It spans the social and natural sciences as well as engineering and the humanities. You can work in any sector, organizations like the Food and Drug Administration, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, in government. There's also international organizations that work a lot on food policy and food research, such as the FAO, which is the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. And then CGAIR is an international agricultural research group of international nonprofits focused on agricultural research. There's about, if I'm not mistaken, there's 20 or more different agricultural research centers in different countries. There's, if you want to do on the nutrition side, medical side, definitely hospitals, affects food systems. There's lots of nonprofits and food companies as well. Just to hone in on this point again, I think, don't feel like your major would determine whether you can work in this field. There's so many angles you can come at this from. I myself started in a science, a hard science major, so I was a chemistry major. But there's so many people in this field that started in social sciences, IR, anthropology, economics. Yeah, I know Tufts doesn't have agriculture, nutrition, or food science majors specifically, but all the other ones, I think you have. So here are some professional skills that if you want to be a food systems professional, as I'm calling it, that might be useful for you to learn. Geographic information systems is software, geography, software where you map things, and it's very commonly used in both the fields of agriculture and public health, which touch on food systems work a lot. So kind of having a basic knowledge of that is one thing you could learn. If you're on the science side, you definitely want to know some things about biology and chemistry, because that's definitely what food, agricultural, and nutrition sciences are based on. But even if you want to be like on the policy side, basic knowledge of that I think is useful. Data analysis, I think, probably been told this before, I think so many, it's just becoming more and more of a needed skill across so many different professions, making data-driven decisions. And any knowledge of R or Python can be similar programmings, but those ones are used a lot in this type of research. And then being able to communicate research and science to different audiences and different stakeholders is a really important skill in this type of work, because you work with a lot of different stakeholders usually, because it's such an interdisciplinary field. So project and program management, that's also can be kind of vague what that is, but managing projects, managing programs, there's a lot of jobs in food systems where you need those types of skills. Policy and economic analysis, absolutely. How does food policy, how do the economics and the policy aspects of our food system change and grow? Systems thinking, I don't know if you've heard that term before, but essentially like having a really good sense of the big picture, being able to connect disparate ideas together is really important because of the interdisciplinary nature of this type of work. And then, back to same kind of idea, cross-sector collaboration, being able to talk to diverse stakeholders, across government and industry, and come to solutions that benefit the future of the food system for everybody. So my background, is more in research. So I just thought I would share some emerging topics. There's so many like cool topics in food. Again, I just want to expose you, I could go way in depth for these, way more in depth into these, but I just want to expose you to some interesting areas. So plant-based and cell-based meat or protein, I think people are still arguing over whether to call it cell-based, cultured, or cultivated. But especially being in the Bay Area now, there's a lot of innovation and startups around these areas. So plant-based, would be like Impossible Foods or Beyond Meat. And there's actually not any like cultured or cell-based meat on the market right now, but it's definitely, there's a lot of startups and work in that area. So the idea there, right, would be to completely to use cells from animals without actually harming any animals. So we could eat meat without harming animals at all. So that's a very interesting area. You can also develop new crop varieties. That's something at Davis that I got exposed to through like plant sciences. It's another field that overlaps here. There's a lot of research going on into how to develop crops that are more nutritious and more resilient to climate change. So, when you can also develop crops maybe that would require less water, which is about related to climate change, or that are more resistant to pests, so that you don't have to use as many harmful pesticides. Sustainable or regenerative farming practices, that's a huge area. So, some of like reducing the amount of harmful pesticides is one way to do that, but there's a lot of research around soil health, making sure that soil is healthy, because that affects the crop health and long-term sustainability of the agricultural production. If you are more like on maybe the biology side, microbiomes are really huge. So, I don't know if you've seen research around how the nutritional microbiome maybe affects your health, your brain health. There's a lot of research still to be done in that area. Also the plant microbiome, the microbiome of food itself, and the soil. There's so many interesting angles there if you're really interested in biology. Food waste and loss is another huge area. There's been some major reports that about a third of our food is wasted. So kind of optimizing the supply chain to make sure that we reduce the amount of food that is lost and wasted. Both, because if, we waste food, then less food is available for people that need it, and also because the waste ends up in landfills and contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. So there's a lot of reasons to focus on food waste and loss. Food upcycling is related to that. That's an interesting concept, that of taking food waste and turning it into new products. So for example, like when you make like wine or grape juice, there's like the skins and the seeds of the grape are left over, and there's lots of nutrients in there. And so, we could use that to make new nutritious food products rather than having it go to waste. Food safety and food fraud, that's a very, the safety of, has always been important. Food fraud is interesting, like for example, the like olive oils, different kinds of oils. Sometimes what's on the label is not actually what is in the food, and kind of my background in chemistry, I have knowledge of that, but but that goes back to, yeah, making sure that the labels are accurate and making sure that, companies aren't, the reason it happens a lot of times is companies are trying to save money by, using cheaper oils that are lower quality. So that's kind of one example. So there's a lot of research on, sustainable eating, sustainable diets, sustainable food products. So we think especially like consumer behavior around wanting to eat in a way that's more environmentally friendly. There's a lot of research there kind of on the economic side, as well as on the environmental science side. And then effect of dietary patterns on public health. I kind of already mentioned the environment, plenty of research there. There's a lot of, so you can think of food system, you can think of like one global food system, or you can think of, individual food systems, like local food systems versus industrial food systems, and, versus like indigenous food systems, which are different. The way that indigenous communities deal with food is different in many ways, and a lot of people are interested in their traditions and how they look at food culturally. Urban farming is another one that's pretty big. A lot of people have, a lot more and more people are having like gardens on the top of buildings, kind of trying to enhance local food availability in cities. So these are just a sampling. There's so many cool topics. I just wanted to expose you to some cool ones. Those are, my background's in research. That's more on the research side. But food, nutrition, marketing, and communications is very important. There's a lot of misinformation, and we always need people to kind of be able to transfer that data, use the data and communicate it in a accurate and effective way. If you want to, again, kind of be on the nutrition side, you can become a registered dietitian nutritionist or a certified nutrition specialist and work with patients or clients on, their healthy behaviors around food and nutrition. A big area actually is, if you want to try to improve the food system, is corporate social responsibility and sustainability in food companies. So that's kind of in the private sector. You can work to hold companies more responsible for the way that they're producing their food. Food law, you can do, put food with anything, food law and policy, food business and entrepreneurship. There's plenty of areas, and there's plenty of opportunities in those areas as well. As you can see, there's many different paths to a successful career in food systems, and there are many angles you can take. But I wanted to take this opportunity now to really dig into my own career path.
Can I ask a question from the audience?
Oh, yeah.
So one of the students wanted to know if there's what value you feel is put on the experience in the restaurant industry, or experiences in sourcing, cooking, and presentation of food of any use in a career.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that's my fault for not highlighting that. That just really hasn't been my background, but I think that's really important. I definitely know people who started in the culinary industry, in the restaurant industry, the retail food industry, and I think that type of perspective is incredibly valuable, and we should, be taking people, be integrating perspectives from all over the food system. So yeah, I feel like I apologize for not mentioning that. I think that's absolutely valuable. I mean, the way we cook, there are ways to reduce waste, for example, in like the way that we cook. And, grocery stores can play a major role in reducing waste too, for example.
Thank you.
So as an undergrad, I was a chemistry major, and I did carbohydrate chemistry research. carbohydrates, you know, in the context of both nutrition and also like vaccines. So both medical and food related applications I was looking at. I also was involved in the Hunger Project for 3 years, or I was a co-coordinator for 3 years and was involved in it for all 4 years. I have, you know, I was very passionate about, you know, food access work in communities and outreach. And then I don't believe this organization exists anymore. Last time I talked to someone was mentoring someone from Tufts, I think it's not sure it's there anymore, but there was an organization called Balance Your Life that I was a part of, which was focused on nutrition and exercise and healthy lifestyle education. So I was part of that. And then I mentioned that I did do Tufts in Chile, and as a chemistry major, that was it was a little bit hard. I mean, to kind of schedule that around like organic chemistry and stuff, but I was really passionate about doing like a really immersive experience in a Spanish-speaking country. So I really glad I did that. So then I got my master's in nutrition science from the Friedman School, which is at the medical campus. Since my background was in chemistry, right, I was definitely more on the science side of food systems at this point. I was really interested in nutritional biomarkers and antioxidants. So I was working for like a clinical nutrition study and kind of analyzing the different levels of antioxidants and, you know, whether the levels of antioxidants could predict certain nutritional outcomes. And yeah, as was mentioned, I also worked while I was doing my master's, I volunteered at the food pantry at Boston Medical Center, which I was really excited about. It was just a cool concept at the time to kind of integrate. It was more, right, kind of like community public health nutrition. I felt like I was helping communities have access to healthy food kind of through a hospital setting and kind of making food an integral part of healthcare. This is also during my master's was the first time I was really exposed to food policy and sustainable agriculture. So that wasn't the focus of my program, but there's a lot of really cool programs at the Friedman School. So I want to shout out to the Friedman School in case if anyone's really interested in any of this, you should just definitely check out the Friedman School. They have super cool master's programs all the way from, nutritional biochemistry to sustainable agriculture and nutrition communications, everything between. So I actually didn't want to take the food policy class that they said, you know, as a science student, you need to take at least one food policy class. And then I was like, oh no, I want to do science. And so anyway, just an example of how I really fell in love with it. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. I like the systems approach. So then after my master's degree, I was really set on moving to California. Again, I think it's important to be transparent about the twists and turns in career paths and things like that. So Driscoll's is like one of, you know, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, right? They do strawberries, blueberries. It's one of the major berry companies. And I got to a third interview where I did a phone interview, a video interview, and they flew me out to California to do an in-person interview. It's like 8 hours long, and I didn't get the job, and it was very difficult. But I think it was a really good experience for me, and I ended up working at University of California, San Francisco, kind of given my background in chemistry and biochemistry and just passion for public health in general. I wasn't really doing anything. I decided, I can give up the food part for a while. So I did chemistry research on HIV drugs for a clinical for like an international HIV trial. So that was cool. And then I was able to be in San Francisco, and there's a lot going on there. But I did eventually want to go back to food. I had my eye on the University of California, Davis. Anyway, since I moved out there, it's about an hour and a half northeast of San Francisco, and they are really well known in a lot of food and agricultural sciences research. So that's when I moved to Davis and found a job up there. So more about my winding path. So I started, so the first thing I did at Davis was I was looking at, again, still really on the chemistry, biochemistry side. I got interested in this field called metabolomics, which definitely you can have applications to food and nutrition and agriculture. But really what it's doing is like looking at metabolism, like the biochemistry of metabolism. So the metabolism of plants or humans. Nutrition definitely affects metabolism a lot, and you can also look at plant metabolism to look at food. So like plant foods, like fruits and vegetables, if you look at their metabolism, then you can see maybe how that could affect human health. So, but that research is definitely in the early stages. And at that point, I was really decided that I didn't want to be in a lab anymore. So that was kind of a moment where I was like, yeah, what about that food policy stuff that I, was reluctant to learn about? And my master's, I'm kind of interested in that a little bit more. So I worked at a nonprofit. There was a program where SNAP recipients, so SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's formerly known as food stamps, but it's for low-income families who need government support. And so it tries to focus on healthy food access. And there was a program where it allowed them to use their SNAP benefits at farmers markets. So I helped support that program. And then I got really interested in international agriculture and nutrition. I did some research on biofortification, which is, I think I had alluded to it before. It's basically enhancing the nutritional quality of crops. So you can do that. You can do that either through genetic means, or you can do it through like agricultural practices like fertilizers and things. But increasing not just food security but nutrition security, that's definitely one approach that's being used, especially in developing countries. So, and then I also went to Peru and looked at the risk of certain agricultural pests and that's when I actually got some exposure to GIS and R, and I looked at how, based on a model, how the risk of the pests would change with the changing climate. So if you increase the temperatures, how does that affect how where the pests are located? And that can be used as information for farmers. I did some teaching. I was really, I was really in higher education, and I really liked being in higher education. It was a really good opportunity for me to explore a lot of things, definitely around food, but also within higher education. So I did. I was a part-time instructor for food and environmental sciences courses, and also for a career development course for students in the College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences. I started writing. I'm very passionate about food, and I felt like being at Davis, I was exposed to a lot of interesting research around that. So I started wanting to communicate that. So I started writing blogs and started a podcast, which I'll talk about a little more later. I also have done a lot of mentoring. I did mentoring I do mentor, just shout out, I do mentoring through the herd. So happy to talk to you guys through then if you don't get a chance to meet with me now. And then I did a lot of mentoring at Davis as well. And yeah, we kind of talked about this, but this was definitely where I was exposed to, really interesting and sometimes controversial topics about, how to create a better food system. So there are definitely people that are not, in support of alternative proteins and believe we should, keep animal agriculture, just make it more regenerative and sustainable and ethical. Yeah, this is where I was exposed to a lot of food waste and food safety research and some of that stuff around food fraud too that I mentioned. I also just became really interested in social innovation and entrepreneurship. I think, just given my research background, and I was looking for ways to translate some of that into practical solutions. And the Bay Area obviously has a lot of startups, so I found myself really interested in that, which is kind of surprising to me because I never really thought that I would be interested in that. But I think there's a lot of potential to translate research into practical solutions that way, and so that was something I was really drawn to. And then I actually also, after I did that teaching, after I taught that career development course, I became really passionate, and through all that mentoring, I became really passionate about career development and coaching and mentoring. So it's not related to food systems, but I do that. I do quite a bit of that as well. So my current role, all the way to my current role. So I work at the UC Davis Innovation Institute for Food and Health now. This is really, I found it's like a very perfect combination of all of my interests. I like working in higher education. I really like innovation and entrepreneurship. I have, the nutrition background and background in food science and agriculture. So, and this work is super interdisciplinary, and I work, partnerships with other organizations and translating this type of food systems research into market solutions. So these are just two examples of projects that I've done really recently. So Element, there was a partnership we worked with, Elemental Accelerator. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with what an accelerator is. I'm going to explain it a little bit. But it's basically what it is if you're an early stage company and you need support to grow. You need accelerators don't just give you money, they give you money, but also like strategic advice and coaching, and they help early stage companies get to that next stage. So this was a really cool experience for me. I didn't even know that this was a thing. And with my food background, I helped, they do a lot of, it's a climate tech accelerator. So they do stuff beyond food, but I was working because of my background with startups in food and agriculture. And I was kind of evaluating the science and the technology aspects. Is this viable, right? Is this actually going to work? In addition to, they didn't fund anything that they didn't think was also like going to have a positive impact on climate or the community. They did a lot of research, talking to people in the community before they would make an investment decision. So this is a whole other area called impact, known as impact investing, which it's not directly related to food systems, but kind of figuring out how to, taking a lot of money and putting it toward things that are making a social impact. And then the project I'm working on right now is definitely more like in the sustainable regenerative agriculture realm. Use a combination, so biosolarization, uses a combination of organic soil amendments and sunlight to suppress pests in the soil and promote long-term soil health. So So right now, chemical soil fumigation is widely used in conventional agriculture, and these pesticides are broadly toxic to farm workers and the environment. So, we're trying to think, we've validated, not me, but at UC Davis, like researchers have validated that this strategy using specific organic soil amendments with sunlight and using, it uses a clear tarp so that the sunlight can come through. And there's different ways where you can use food waste actually in this process. So you can use food waste as part of the agricultural amendment. So that's kind of also goes back to like the circular food system concept. So it's like a novel concept. So I'm currently working, kind of doing economic research essentially right now to see whether this is a viable solution for farmers. So this can be used in both conventional and organic agriculture. So I just want to, I do other projects, and I'm really passionate about, I'm not passionate about, but I think I've figured out that I am more of a generalist. I like to do, you could probably see that from my background. I like to know a lot about I like to know about a lot of different areas, and I feel I identify as someone that has a portfolio career where I do different things at one time. So, on the side of my main research position at UC Davis, I'm working on a podcast, and I mentioned it earlier. My goal with the podcast, as I've gotten into this realm of food systems, I realized there's a lot of divisiveness and just, strong opinions. People have strong opinions about food. That makes sense. But I think that one of my goals with the podcast is bringing experts together to discuss and debate the future of food. And kind of bringing people together. I think there's a lot of nuances that are often not captured in the media. And so I think that podcasting is a good medium for this, that allows for more in-depth discussion of these topics, because they're very complicated. And I do career coaching on the side, which just really brings me a lot of joy. Like I said, I got into it because I started teaching it and had done a lot of mentoring. So I do that as well. So I think some of my career themes, obviously food systems is a theme, and I think I didn't necessarily realize that. I think I almost brought that together myself when I realized that I wanted to do nutrition science, and then realized that I was doing all this like volunteer work on food access and stuff, and I was like, oh, those are so different, but how are they similar? And then it's really around the food system, and absolutely, like, there's so many aspects of the food system that I haven't touched upon that I don't have personal experience with, but totally, the restaurant and retail industry plays a huge role too. And then supply chain, supply chain is huge. How do we sustainably source food ingredients? That's a very big area as well, which I just don't have as much experience with. But in addition to food systems, a couple of themes that came out for me when I was thinking about my career are, I really want to translate research into practical solutions. And you can definitely do that in policy, you can do that in business and entrepreneurship. There's lots of different ways you can do that, nonprofits too. But and then, as I said, I really like mentoring and career development, and both my own and helping other people develop theirs. So that's another theme. I have some takeaways around food systems that if you don't get anything else, this is what I'd love you to take away. People in this field, you're a good fit for this field if you're really driven by a strong passion for a healthier, more sustainable, and more equitable food system. I think everybody in this field is really mission driven, and that is what makes them want to be in this field. The second thing, going back to my interdisciplinary and cross-sector nature of it, really think about what aspect you want to be involved in. I mean, you can be a scientist developing plant-based meats. You can be working in food policy at an international NGO, and you're still part of this food systems world. The other thing is, if you found this interesting, but maybe not exactly your thing, there's lots of ways you can support a better food system through your individual actions, without working in this field specifically. And then in terms of career takeaways, things that I wish maybe someone would have told me earlier, or earlier in my career. I really did think when I was studying chemistry that I was going to be a scientist and like a biochemist, and that was what I was going to do. And obviously that's not what happened. I have been exposed to so many different, I did stay a little like in research, but beyond that, I'm doing economic research at this point. So your major does not determine career path. I don't know if you've heard that 1,000 times, but I would just like to reiterate it. And also, you don't necessarily have to choose one career path or one job. I think more and more in this world, people are pivoting and changing and doing multiple things at the same time. And if you want to talk to me about how I'm doing that, I'm happy to talk about that. Also, I think it's just really important to reflect on your career themes, as I call them, or just areas where you keep finding, yourself coming back to. Basically, at the end of the day, it's just do more of what you like, and that. But by identifying what you like, and reflecting and thinking about what you didn't like and what you did like in certain jobs, really helps you clarify what you enjoy most. And then also, I think about whether you want to be a generalist or a specialist or somewhere in between. Both are totally okay. Obviously, I feel more like I'm a generalist. I think I enjoy that more. I have more variety, but obviously if you're, a doctor, you need to be a specialist. So both are okay and needed in our society. All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, I'm on the herd. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, and feel free to email me.
So thank you again, Emily, all of this good information. What a powerful, powerful PowerPoint that you're sharing with me. And just to remind our audience, my name is Malaika. I'm an advisor in the Career Center. And this information and this presentation is recorded. So if you were taking notes, great. If not, you want to review it, we will have this up on our website. On our YouTube channel, actually, probably before the end of next week. I'm going to be putting a few things in the chat as we get questions from the audience. One of the things that I'm putting in, well, I'll put it in at some point. Our speaker mentioned the herd. The herd is a networking database that is a combination of resources from the Tufts Career Center and the Alumni Affairs Association here at Tufts. And so with the herd, you'll be able to look up Tufts alumni like Emily and reach out to them, and they have volunteered their time to offer informational career conversations with Tufts students to explore their careers. And this is available from alum to alum and from current students to get advice from alum as well.